a strange Washington mystery that also affects potentially everyone's national security. We have a whistleblower. We have a foreign leader, potentially. We have the President of the United States. And this has gotten really different over the last 24 hours because of what can only be described as very serious new developments because of this whistleblower that we've reported on before, who we know, according to Donald Trump's own intelligence community, is credible. And this individual is trying to send a warning, basically, to the Congress, a.k.a. someone who can do something about this because of these credible concerns about Donald Trump's behavior, not in general, not Donald Trump tweeting, not Donald Trump lying. No, Donald Trump doing things germane, according to this credible whistleblower, germane to intelligence and national security. And there's a lot of different reporting on this. If you've been watching the beat, you've seen we've been reporting on what Congressman Schiff has said and what print outlets have said. And what has changed lately is new reporting about the nature of this. The New York Times is reporting the whistleblower raised concerns about a series of actions involving Trump that go beyond any, quote, single discussion with a foreign leader. Now, NBC has not confirmed the report, and as we've noted in all of our reporting on this, we are talking about a fight over an anonymous complaint. So on the one hand, it's super important to get into. On the other hand, no one claims to have the physical complaint. But the Washington Post also is contributing to our understanding because they've separately reported out through their sources that this has to do with, at some level, Donald Trump making a, quote, promise to a foreign leader with a U.S. intelligence official saying that's so troubling that it led to the complaint we've been covering, the formal whistleblower complaint with the intelligence services. Another former U.S. intelligence official says Trump's conversation was, according to this person's belief, a phone call. Now, we don't know who Donald Trump was talking to. As I mentioned, we don't know what they were talking about. We don't know whether that promise is the whole story or part of the story or that there's something else going on. So what do we know? Why is this so huge? Well, we know this internal watchdog for the intelligence community, Inspector General, is part of the Trump administration. And this person who does this for a living determined the complaint was credible and urgent. And that is not just a set of words. That is the standard that then requires notification to Congress under federal law. Then you have more mystery, more intrigue, because Trump's Director of National Intelligence is then acting contrary to law to fork over the details. Now, that doesn't mean, and I want to be fair here, that doesn't mean that that automatically means everybody's in on the conspiracy. It may be that something bad was alleged about some people in the White House or intel, and that the Intelligence Inspector General and DNI, that's the director, are trying to figure out what to do about it. So this goes to another layer of this sordid tale because they then went to the Justice Department, where Bill Barr has been quite the protector of the president. A DOJ official says that the DOJ used their legal counsel office to review what to do. But they won't say whether Mr. Barr, who runs it all, was personally involved. Now, the Inspector General, the man who basically said this was a credible complaint, went in, and this is another sign of how serious this thing that we don't know exactly what it is, well, they went in and had to brief the House Intelligence Committee members in a confidential session. Now, they, in that session, didn't learn the substance of the entire complaint, which, of course, continues to raise what are increasingly alarming questions.
We do know that the Department of Justice has been involved in the decision to withhold that information from Congress. We do not know because we cannot get an answer to the question about whether the White House is also involved.
I want to bring in our experts tonight, California Congresswoman Jackie Speier, who serves on that Intelligence Committee and was in the closed-door briefing today, Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, an experienced diplomat, and Jason Johnson, politics editor for The Root. Thank you all. Congresswoman, I've taken pains in our reporting to distinguish all that we don't know from the little that has come out, and understanding that you're restricted under your obligations of what you can tell us. So let's start with, for viewers who are saying, well, I heard something about this, but it seems to be like it's getting more serious. What can you tell us about what this is, and how serious do you view it?
So the Inspector General is required under the law, when a whistleblower complaint comes in, to determine whether it's credible and whether it's urgent. And he has 14 days in which to do that. He was able to establish both that it was credible and that it was urgent. It was then communicated to the DNI, and he was, within 7 days, supposed to make sure that the House and Senate Intelligence Committee would gain access to that information and to that complaint. The DNI did not do that, and basically it took the Inspector General some time to figure out that he wasn't going to do that, and so it was the Inspector General who then communicated with Congressman Schiff, again, as chair of the committee, that there was this serious allegation that it was urgent. And urgent is a really important word to focus on. Urgent means it's impacting our national security. It is at the highest level of concern. So that is why so many of us are deeply troubled by the actions that have taken place.
Can I ask you, just on that point you raised, if they blow through these deadlines under federal law, are they in violation of the law right now tonight?
Yes, they are in violation of the law, but as we have found over and over again, the penalty is not inscribed in the law, and it will take years probably to be able to process this through the courts to get access. So holding someone in contempt here, in civil contempt, in my view, is not going to be acceptable. Holding either the DNI or the Attorney General in inherent contempt is where we precisely have to go, because this is such an urgent issue. And what is happening in front of us right now is it's eviscerating the whistleblower protections that we have put in place throughout the executive branch, and will create a chilling effect. By virtue of going to the Attorney General, what happened is this particular whistleblower has lost all the protections that we inscribe in the whistleblower law, because the AG is saying that this doesn't come under whistleblower protection. So I'm deeply concerned about protecting the whistleblower from reprisals.
Well, that's such an important point you make, because it seems like they're building the case potentially against the person looking for the loophole rather than doing what these laws are intended. And Ambassador, let's be clear, we're not talking about somebody running to the New York Times or the cameras or leaking, which this administration, but in fairness, many administrations struggle with and complain about. This is someone who claims they saw something that the Congresswoman just detailed for us, the level of urgency, and then went through the process they're supposed to go through. And yet, because of the Trump administration's actions, that process seems to be breaking down. For your analysis, Ambassador, I want to read from the New York Times on this, that under the law, the complaint must have the existence of an intelligence activity violating the law, rules, or regs, or otherwise be mismanagement, waste, abuse, or danger, meaning not just, oh, you disagree with it or it sounds silly. Donald Trump enjoys broad power as president to declassify intelligence secrets, to order the community to act and otherwise direct the conduct of foreign policy as he sees fit. What do you take as the significance of that very high bar that, according to the IG, has been potentially violated?
Well, two things, Ari. First, the part about the whistleblower law is very important. I want to underscore that. I was the U.S. ambassador in Moscow when Mr. Snowden arrived, and I, many, many times on the record, said we have a system in place for whistleblowers to take their complaints to higher levels. This undermines those arguments that I was making on the record, what is happening right now, and I hope we get that straightened out. The second thing, I worked in the U.S. government at the White House. I do not understand why the DNI is talking to the Attorney General about intelligence matters. I hope we get to the bottom of that. The DNI reports to the President of the United States, and the Attorney General and Department of Justice is not an intermediary between that. And then finally, to the point that you just said, it suggests to me, and I want to keep emphasizing, we're all grabbing here at straws with a lot of holes that we do not know about, right? We're dealing with very little information.
Straws are supposed to have two holes, in fairness.
Yeah, okay, that was a bad metaphor.
I'm just listening closely,
I'm not going to try
Ambassador.
another metaphor. I'm going to keep it straight, which is to say, in my understanding, having worked closely with the intelligence community when I was in the government, nobody that I know would go to these steps unless there was something really serious. This is not about the inappropriate use of classified material. It is not even about policy disagreements. I'm glad you said that. If the president says, I'm going to lift sanctions to have better relations with Putin, you and I might disagree with that. I disagree with it. But that's his prerogative.
It's also out in the open.
I mean,
what you're getting at, Ambassador, which is why we've gotten up to this point tonight, is that stuff and a lot of other highly objectionable, unusual stuff that Donald Trump does is out in the open. We're talking about someone
Right.
who's at a senior enough level to have this level of access, who knows the rules and is trying to go through the whistleblower protection, who knows they could lose their job or worse. I mean, we're speaking in a climate where there are still questions swirling around whether the White House tried to get a senior ex-DOJ official indicted who happened to investigate the Russia probe. That's the climate. So this person's looking for whistleblower protection, but still has decided, notwithstanding everything Trump does in public, notwithstanding every tweet and every statement and every lie, that there's something else so big they're going to go put their neck on the line here to flag this. What kind of thing could that be, Ambassador?
Well, first, Ari, you said something really important there that I want to make sure your listeners heard. This person has to be very senior in the intelligence community. POTUS phone calls are not read out to the entire U.S. government and the entire CIA. I used to organize those phone calls for President Obama. That is a very small group of people that have access to that. So if this was a phone call, it suggests it's somebody very senior. And second, I think it points to either criminal behavior, and again, I'm speculating here, or some threat to a key asset to the intelligence community.
Wow.
To be so motivated to take this extraordinary act, it has to be something extraordinary. And in my mind, it's in one of those two buckets.
Wow. Congresswoman, before I let you go, what comes next out of the Congress on this?
Well, we will be having an open hearing with the Director of National Intelligence next week. But we're going to be pursuing this with great emphasis because one of the things the Inspector General did say to us, of the 15 cases that he has referred to the House and Senate intelligence committees, even though they didn't meet the standards. Historically, that's always been the case. They're always forwarded to us even when they do not meet the standards. This was the one case where urgency was met. And I think the Inspector General is very anxious to try and get the Attorney General or the Director of National Intelligence to allow him to make the committees aware of what the topic is of this particular complaint.
Understood. Congresswoman Speier, thank you so much. Ambassador McFaul, thank you. I turn now to Jason Johnson, who's here with me. I want to broaden out. We have the national security experts, and no shade, but the diplomat and the intelligence committee member know more than us about that stuff.
Just a little bit, yes.
Having excavated all of that, I want to turn to you on the political science of this and the congressional executive relations, because in a way, this is an echo of the oversight and impeachment debate, but without as much knowledge of what the underlying thing is. What do you do when you get defiance?
Exactly. So that's a very good question, Ari, because the issue here is, look, we don't know what this promise was. And there's been other reporting that says that it might include someone beyond President Trump, right? He could have said something like, hey, I promise that I can get you on this committee at the United Nations. He could have said, you know, Russia, I'll give you Alaska back. We don't know what he did, but we know it was something that people thought was important enough that they had to complain about. Here's the issue here. We have a government that right now functions in a way where not only is William Barr operating as the personal attorney of the President of the United States, he's basically also his cleaner, right? He makes problems disappear. Whenever someone has to talk to William Barr, suddenly we don't find out as much as information. You know, transparency, honesty, and integrity die when they go to the Department of Justice now. So it falls upon the Oversight Committee to be as aggressive as they can. They can drag people in. They can force people to testify. If someone doesn't want to testify, they can call the sergeant at arms and put them in the little jail underneath the Congress. That is the kind of behavior that we have to see from the Oversight Committee.
And sometimes it almost sounds like resistance fan fiction when you put it that way, or an episode of 24 or whatever tangled analogy you want to use.
Right.
You know, I hit McFaul on the straw thing. But I do a lot of bad analogies myself.
It's okay.
But when you get beyond the fan fiction, you actually are saying, no, the record suggests that they will push as far as possible.
Exactly.
Whether it's defying the subpoena or sending Lewandowski into act in a way that, according to reports about Speaker Pelosi today, that she thought that was contemptuble, and saying hold him in contempt. And what do you do then? How do you respond to that? Because they're just seeing what they can get away with.
Well, and that's the whole point, all right? Like, I'm not part of the resistance. I'm not a Democrat. I'm just an American citizen who's concerned about the fact that our government is basically doing whatever it wants under this administration. Congress has power. They have both political power and they have functional power. They have an oversight constitutional responsibility. There is a reason that you can hold people in contempt. There's a reason that there is a jail. It is to embarrass, to shame, and force an administration to follow the laws that are on the books. And at the end of all this, which is the most dangerous, is if this issue was considered urgent, the longer it takes before oversight gets to find out what's really going on and who was involved, this urgent issue could become more dangerous.
Right.
That's why it's important for Congress to be more aggressive.
Very interesting to get your breakdown on the politics and the congressional fight ahead, and nice to see you here on set in New York, Jason Johnson.
Thank you.
We're going to fit in a 30-second break, and then I have a special